And we're on, and this is 3 yards per carry, the first of the year, the first podcast of the year, not the last of the season. We've still got a ways to go. We always do our last podcast of the season the day after the Super Bowl, and then it'll kick off our 9th season. 9 years of doing this. Does it feel like 9 years, Simon?
Feels like 90 years.
But yeah, as always,
it feels like we've done it for longer, actually. But
yeah, right. Well, technically, we were doing a podcast in our DMs for like about 10 years.
But we've known each other for
I
mean, genuinely must be. I mean, Chris and I certainly. I mean, 30 years,
something like that.
It's close to that. It's pretty close to that.
It must be,
because Simon and I go as far back as old Herald board stuff. And I think Keith, believe it or not, Keith, our doctor friend who's on the Discord, often quite controversial. He mentioned, I saw him mentioning not too long ago that I think he's known you, Simon, even longer than I have.
Yeah, maybe.
I think he was on. I think you guys even predate that Herald board, to a different place.
Must be at least 30 years, I reckon.
Yeah. I found every once in a while I get nostalgic and I start looking for old posts, and I found one that when I get a chance, I'm gonna post it on Discord, where
as long as it's not mine.
I do this long self-indulgent screed on Drew Brees versus Dante Culpepper, and my conclusion was they can't miss.
They can't miss.
Take either one and you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
I can remember. So I'm just trying to think of what's his name. Talk amongst yourselves. What's the tackle that we drafted in the second round out of Mississippi State?
Todd Wade.
Yeah.
Right. I can remember. When was that? He was selected in the 2000 draft. So that's 26 years ago. I can remember talking to Keith in the immediate aftermath of that pick, because Keith's a Mississippi State alum.
Oh, so yeah, right.
That's at least 26 years.
God.
I mean, I can actually remember where I was standing when I heard that we drafted him, and Keith messaged me to say he was really good.
Yeah. By the way, is Keith just a spectacular quarterback evaluator or just a hopeless homer? Because he had Dak Prescott that whole run up to the draft. He was like, they got to take Dak Prescott. Take Dak Prescott at all costs.
I think it's a little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
He's a big draft guy, but
he's actually, and let's turn this into a Keith thing. But what he's really good at, one of the things that he's really good at is actually just kind of piecing things together and kind of predicting what's going to happen.
Yeah,
like who they're after. And I mean, of course, we all know that all of us can kind of get entrenched in a certain opinion and and that's how things can get out of hand. But he's really good at putting together that kind of mosaic on, and just this is leading toward this, and I think that's something that I appreciate about a lot of people.
This is Dr. Keith Box for Miami fans who don't know what we're talking about, but will probably know him or know of him or have seen him on different message boards or whatever. So
and if you want to listen, if you want to read what he writes, and you want to interact with him and you want to interact with us, although it's going to be really interesting once you show up there and you join. And to do that, you go to discord.gg/OnlyFins. You see right there on the screen. Do it on a desktop. Avoid the Apple upcharges. $4.99 all access every month. I suggest that when you sign up, talk to him about Mike McDaniel. It's going to be it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, when you talk to him about Mike McDaniel. All right, let's kick off the show and let's talk about the college football playoff quarterfinal. I'm pretty sure we're going to pick the semifinal next week. We'll just with an eye to the draft for some of these guys. And look, I don't think we're going to talk too much about Texas Tech, Oregon. I don't think Dante Moore played particularly well.
No.
Texas Tech, I said it before when we were picking the game. I was like, man, Morton just did not finish the season well. And that offense was just putrid. Oregon's really physical, though. The people look at those uniforms and they're a sleek-looking team. They have an exciting quarterback, and you think, oh, they must throw it all over the lot. No, they're a physical team. Like, that's a physical football team. They beat the hell out of Texas Tech. I don't think we got too much on that. Your thoughts?
Apart from the edge rusher, the Texas Tech edge rusher.
David Bailey.
David Bailey, who is, he's pushing his way into
he is
top 5, maybe even at this point. I mean, the speed he gets off the ball, and he was an off-ball linebacker back at May Today, the California kind of treadmill of great talent. And yeah, he is a very, very good player and a much better run defender this year.
I was going to say he looks like an all-arounder, actually.
Yeah. He had 70 pressures, 12.5 sacks during the regular season. He's to me, he's the best pure pass rusher. Super traitsy, long arms, incredibly twitchy, can bend, as we saw yesterday. Speed to power guy, and yeah, he's a really interesting guy.
And yet, it was the corner Finney that took over the game basically on defense for Oregon. I mean, that Oregon defensive line. Any teams that built well in the trenches, I think they're showing up in these playoff games, right?
Yeah,
that's what we're going to talk about.
Look Miami. Indiana was great, Miami and Indiana.
And Miami, Indiana, you're built well in the trenches, and I think Oregon is built well on the defensive line, and they're built well on the offensive line, I think too. But traditionally,
because they've got DJ Uiagalelei's brother, Mateo, who's the edge, who's the former 5-star guy, the number 9 guy in the class,
and another 300 and some odd pounder that has like a 36-inch vertical, and I forget his name.
They've got what's his name? He's going to be a top 40 pick if he comes out. The defensive tackle whose name
the defensive tackle,
Amari Washington.
I thought it was Washington. I mean, and those guys were controlling the game, and I thought that they were. I did think that they were going to have a bounce back from that. They allowed JMU to get 34 points on them, and that's this bye week thing. I don't know why it's a thing. It shouldn't be.
Yeah,
but it is.
I just don't think college players are used to that kind of get to the end of the season and then they'll have to wait around. And usually it's kind of, especially over the last 10 years, and it's bowl games when not everybody plays, underclassmen don't play because if they're going to the draft or whatever. And, maybe it's just that kind of mentality thing. Well, I mean, India didn't seem to stop Indiana yesterday, certainly. But
no, it didn't. But that's the one. That's the one team in 8.
Yeah, it's a Signetti scraper as well, though, isn't it? They are very much that kind of team.
Now, to be fair, last year they had 2 teams get buys just because they won their conferences, like Boise State, and those teams they were underdogs as
that's fair
as bye week guys. Ohio State was 24 days removed from their game against Indiana. Miami was 21 days removed from their game against Pittsburgh when they played Texas A&M. So. It's give or take. It was around that 3-week period for most of these teams if they played in a conference title game. If you didn't play in a conference title game, you were sitting around for a month.
Yeah,
And
I find that when these teams and traditionally this is, let's not speak about the playoffs, but going back when these teams have had a month. Until they get to their bowl game, I often find that they look like a different team, and they look more like the team that they're going to look like next year. Like it's almost like that month is an off season, kind of for these teams, and it can change things.
All right, moving on. Indiana, Alabama. This was not a game, except for a brief moment in time there where they got a little bit of pressure on Fernando Mendoza. Man, that is such a well-coached team. Indiana is, and he has that lifetime contract. If you're an NFL team, you got to look at the organization that guy has built from nothing, legitimately nothing. That's a basketball school. Okay, that's a basketball school known for their snappy basketball uniforms, their national titles, their Final Four runs. Football at Indiana, no. They don't do that. Well, they do now. If you're an NFL team, like he has to be at the top of the list. It's going to take somebody to break the bank because he just has the best job in America. But Indiana,
he made the playoffs last year, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So I mean, like this is 2 years they made the playoffs. Now they're gonna they're definitely in line to make that run at the championship. And prior to what was the record the year before he took over? I mean,
They were awful.
This is an overnight thing. This is literally an overnight thing. They were 3-9 in 2023, and then they went 11-2 last year to go to the playoffs, and now they're in line for the championship, in line for competing for it.
Simon, you agree with me? You agree with me, right? Kirk
I didn't hear
Cignetti
anything. Somebody was knocking at my front door. So
okay. What I was saying is that Kirk Cignetti is probably the hottest coaching property right now in the like. If you're an NFL team, like that's who you want
in all of football. In all of football, I mean, I think the coaching job he's done over the last few years is right up there with anything anybody's maybe ever done in college football. I think we're all prisoners of the moment, but I mean, to do what he's done with that team, I mean, they just smashed Alabama, a perennial national champion, 38-3, and it probably wasn't even as close as that.
No.
I mean, that was a phenomenal performance. I don't know whether or not. I mean, I don't think he's for moving. He signed the new contract, and when he signed the contract, I think there's a significant amount of money that's now pouring through the Indiana coffers in terms of NIL. I think they've got some pretty big financial backers. But also, if you're a college quarterback or you're a college player, you're looking around that team and you see, D'Angelo Pons, and you see Mendoza, and you see, Surratt and Omar Cooper Jr. and Roman Hemby and all those players that are going to go into the NFL. And you see a coach like Cignetti, you just think, if I'm in the portal, why wouldn't I want to go and play for that coach? Why wouldn't I want to go and, I don't think Indiana are going away anytime soon. I think that's the most important thing. I just don't, and I do wonder whether or not his slightly quirky style would jive with professional players. I mean, you can't doubt the leadership and everything else, but I do wonder whether or not maybe that's a sticking point potentially. But the coaching job he's done is unbelievable.
I think this is a really cool moment in college football in one way. We lament a lot of the things that are changing in college football, right? But this is a cool moment in college football in one way, which is that we're sort of seeing a topsy-turvy kind of turning upside down that happens when you create a completely new dynamic. And there is a completely new dynamic, which is that basically if you know where to spend your money and how to spend your money, and you're particularly good at that, then you could rise fast. Because Indiana, they're not a broke school. Mark Cuban is backing their NIL, is backing their NIL efforts. So, they're able to pay players, they're able to pay Kirk Cignetti, and stuff like that. So, but it's one of those things where it used to be, while the money was arguably under the table, if existent at all, it's just all about the reputation of the school and how well you recruit and sort of the mystique around your program and things like that. And now it's almost like professional. It's almost like the NFL. If you know where to spend your resources and you have an advantage that way, you could rise quick. And it's a cool moment because if you're the NFL, you're like, I want to hire these guys. They're showing that they know that they have an advantage on knowing how and where to spend their resources. And that's the new dynamic in college football, is knowing how and where to spend your resources and not just simply relying on the majesty of your program in the recruiting process. And so it's a completely new dynamic. And if you're the NFL, you would be eyeballing it because I'm going to pick off talent here. I'm going to pick off guys that know what they're doing.
But also, isn't it great that we're in the situation where we're in the Final Four? There's only one SEC team, and that's not Alabama or Georgia. It's Ole Miss. It's not
Ole Miss.
It's not any of
that's testament to exactly that, because Ole Miss doesn't have a lot of money. That's why Lane Kiffin, for an SEC team, they have some money, but they don't have, they don't compete with like Florida, LSU as far as the money that pours into those programs.
Absolutely, and
but they knew where to spend it.
Yeah, Ole Miss has fair weather money because they spent a ton of money on that roster 2 years ago, and then just said, "Well, we got no results. Turn off the spigot." you know, and it doesn't
And
work
when I
that
was-
way. You have to keep coming up with the budget every single year to get these guys.
When I was growing up, getting into college football in the 80s and 90s, national championships were won by Penn State, Miami, Nebraska, BYU, Bama, Colorado, Florida, Georgia Tech, Tennessee, P. Martin, Ohio State, Oklahoma, USC, Texas. That's Florida State. That's you just don't get that anymore. And it's great to see a Final Four with, Miami historically, obviously a glamour team with a great history, but have been in the doldrums for a decade or so. Indiana, obviously a complete newbie. Ole Miss, as we just discussed, not one of the SEC sexy teams, and then Oregon are kind of perennial, but and almost Oregon are the kind of they're the one non-Cinderella story in all this. I think they're kind of just they're there. Indiana the most probably because of their history, but Miami, obviously their return to greatness is. That's a Cinderella story, and it feels like they're on a kind of a path of destiny. And same with Ole Miss in many regards, with what's happened with Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding coming in and doing that. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with the semifinals. Will LSU let Golding and Charlie Wise Jr. coach that, and what's going to happen there? What's going to be the situation? So I think it's a situation though that's going to be akin to the Major League Baseball, because there are still programs that either have money or not. Right. You have money. You don't.
There's
have money.
news, by the way, there's news on that. Ole Miss would have to extend these coaches for this game because their contract runs out after the quarterfinal. So they're either going to play the game against Miami missing 5 coaches, or they're going to have to pay those 5 coaches for this one game. Yeah. Or however far that they go. Ohio State, Miami. Obviously, I'm partial to this. I thought it was kind of crazy that they were 10-point underdogs when you could reasonably suggest that Miami has the better offensive line and the better defensive line. I go back to the ACC Media Day when Mario Cristobal was asked, what is the identity of your team? And he said, well, last year our star was Cam Ward. This year our star is our offensive line. And when he was on with Nick Saban's like, Mario, what are you doing bringing out goal line on 3rd and 3? And he's like, I remember a coach that when they had this type of offensive line would look at 3rd and 3 as a 2-run down situation. Oddly enough, Miami ran it on 3rd and 3, and then they passed it on 4th and 2 to get the first down to Malachi Tony. But what did you make of that game? And obviously, you can see under my name, I'm partial to one player in particular. I saw the whole season. I watched every single snap this team has played. Yeah, Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor, they're great players. Keontae Scott has – look, if he didn't miss that big block of games toward the end of the year, I think he'd be being talked about as a top 50 prospect right along with those guys. I think in my eyes, he's been their best – most consistent player. Like, it's splash play after splash play, big hit after big hit. He's a great player. Your thoughts on this game, Simon?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when Mario Cristobal was talking before the game and in the run-up about violence and how violent Miami were going to be, and I think they just came out and just did that. And I just thought it was really interesting that Ohio State, for all their kind of defensive stars, Reese and Styles and Downs and guys that are going to be high first-round picks, and Curry, the defensive end, and the defensive tackle, McDonald, those guys, it was just like they just couldn't match the intensity. And I think, as Chris alluded to, right at the top, or maybe even before we started, that it's been fascinating to see the teams that have been able to dominate the trenches like Miami have. You look at Markel Bella, left tackle, and Marinoa at right tackle, and then you look at, Mesidor and Ruben Bain on the defensive line. Those are absolute cornerstones for a team. And when you can add in a Malachi Tony and a Mark Fletcher, who's been brilliant, and Carson Beck, who does what you ask of him to do, and Keontae Scott and some of those players on the back end, that's kind of what you need. And I thought Miami were just more physically dominant, and just a better team. And Julian Sayin just played, we've said this a lot, but he played small in a big moment. And that was an uncomfortable game for him, and it was uncomfortable. And I think Ryan Day's an absolute helmet, so I was glad that Miami won. But yeah, I thought they absolutely deserved to win. So yeah.
By the way, Jeremiah Smith, is he Andre Johnson or Julio Jones?
I mean, he's a top 5 pick.
He was terrifying. He was one man against my team, and I was just terrified. Like, are we going to lose to this one guy?
Yeah, it was a shame Carnell Tate didn't play it as well as I think it doesn't take anything away from his talent, but yeah.
I thought it was crazy that after the they're asking Jeremiah Smith, if Miami had been playing like this, would you have signed with Miami instead of Ohio State? And he was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you just said it outright. I'm like, you're not supposed to even say that. Like,
by the way, the background on that is that he spurned Miami to go to Ohio State. Like, Miami was all in on recruiting Jeremiah Smith, and he said, nah, I'm good. I'll go to Ohio State. Your thoughts?
Mario
Chris,
Cristobal was classy about it. Like, he was asked about that answer, and he was just like, I wish Jeremiah Smith and his family, big fans of theirs, stuff like that. Like, he was classy about it. But just come right out and say, yeah, if Miami had been playing like this during the recruiting process, yeah, I would have gone with them over Ohio State. Like, you play for Ohio State, man. You're not supposed to say that.
Yeah. So you have anything on the players, Chris? Now that you got to see them up close.
No, I mean, Keontae Scott has always popped out at me. Sonny Styles has always popped out at me. I mean, there's a mess of players on both sides.
Yeah, Sonny Styles, by the way, stat on that game, he had his first missed tackle of the season in that game on a Mark Fletcher run. First missed tackle.
And so I think the trenches got it done. The violence of that defense got it done.
We've got an update on. We talked about in the Discord about Brendan Sorsby in Miami. He has got 2 visits lined up. Pete Thamel is reporting 2 visits lined up. Where are they?
Well, you got to think
Miami is one, and the
Texas Tech and LSU.
LSU.
The LSU thing is interesting. It makes me think that Trinidad Chambliss will not get that 6th year of eligibility.
Yeah,
because I think that he would follow Kiffin and
Texas Tech. Texas Tech is his coach, right?
And Indiana just recruited Josh Hoover, the quarterback of TCU.
They did at TCU,
yeah. So what that sets up to me is, because Hoover's a good quarterback. I think he's a good college quarterback. But I think it sets up like kind of a valid competition between Alberto Mendoza and Josh Hoover.
And by the way, Barry Jackson has reported that Miami has already made its offer to Brendan Sorsby, which if you put 2 and 2 together, the people that know said that they were preparing the same package that they prepared for Carson Beck. So it's $4 million is what they're going to offer Brendan Sorsby. And if they don't,
want to see how he performs.
Yeah, if they don't get Brendan Sorsby, I think that they'll pivot pretty hard to Sam Levitt, and that'll make 2 years that they settle for their second choice.
Levitt seems to be going to Kentucky, according to
he went into the transfer portal as a no contact.
Yeah,
like do not contact,
which makes it seem like he
has his team.
Yeah, On3 is saying that Kentucky are hot favorites for Sam Levitt, but yeah, when they have a do not contact tag, that is interesting.
Yeah.
All right, last game, Georgia, Ole Miss, and then we'll go to break, and we'll actually talk a little Dolphins. I was actually really surprised by this game. I thought Georgia was the best team I saw all season, and that game just got away from them. Their defense just couldn't stop the passing game of Ole Miss, and what a finish to that game! What a furious comeback by Georgia toward the end there, and then they give up the big play at the end, and the rare, really good NFL quality kicker wins it for Ole Miss. Your thoughts on this game and the players coming out of this game?
Yeah, I thought it was an outstanding game. I didn't stay up and watch it, but watched it back this morning. And yeah, I really wanted Ole Miss to win. Actually, I think Georgia have got lots of really good players, but for the reasons that we talked about 10 minutes ago, it's great to see newcomers, as it were, into these games, into this semi-final. And I think they've got some really good players. Look, Trinidad Chambliss, we've talked about. I know that he has been trying to get a 6th year of eligibility. He was at 4 years at Ferris State, a year at Ole Miss, but he missed a season because he had intestinal breathing problems, I think in 2022, and he also has the COVID year as well, so it would have given him 6 years. He applied to the NCAA, and they came back to him on December the 8th and said they weren't inclined to offer him the extra year, but could he provide more information? Now, I know that he hired a lawyer, and the attorney had, as late as December the 22nd, had been speaking to the NCAA and petitioning for Chambliss to get that extra year because they claimed that it would be stopping him from from earning money. Because I don't think he's a first-round pick. It wouldn't surprise me if a team that was comfortable in their own skin kind of dipped into the back end of round one, maybe. But I think he'll come in at under 6 foot tall. He's athletic, he's tough, and he played really well. There's some really good play. Like I love the guy who had the big sack, Suntarine Perkins, the sort of edge overhang linebacker. I mean, he's like 6'3", but 210 pounds. I don't know where you play him, but he's so fast. And Deshaun Stribling, who's the big wide receiver who had the deep ball, the 40-yarder down the sideline, a really good player. And I thought, to be fair to Chambliss, I thought his ball placement was excellent as well. So there's some good players there. Georgia obviously have really good players, CJ Allen and Dayton Everett on the back end who scored the touchdown, and some of those big guys on both lines. But yeah, I was just glad that Ole Miss won actually, and it was nice seeing. I was kind of watching it back this morning, just thinking, penny for Lane Kiffin's thoughts watching all this.
Well, I think that Lane Kiffin checked his balance on his phone as soon as midnight hit and saw another 500,000. He was like, "Go Rebs!"
There's got to be more to life than cash, though,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure he's happy for some of those players and some of those assistant coaches and stuff. But no, I think you bring up, Alf, you brought up something in the question about the kicker, pro level kind of kicker that's able to win it, and it's just it brings to mind something that's been kicking around in my head for a couple months actually, which is that there's probably an unrecognized opportunity here for the NFL with respect to kickers, because we all know that we've seen the K-ball changes in the NFL this year. It seems like it's taken the 50, the 56 yarder is now the equivalent of the old 49 yarder or something like that. Like there's been a radical change in the NFL and on two fronts with the kickers. The first being the K-ball is now being able to be treated by the team in whatever way they want to, and it extends those kickers' ranges, and you got guys kicking ridiculous lengthy field goals in the NFL this year. We've seen that. The other thing that is the radical change is the kickoff. Now that the touchback is at the 35, we're 2 years into this new kickoff format. But we're also seeing the sort of the dirty ball kick, separate as far as field position goes. The teams that are able to do it are really are having field position basically 10 yards different from other teams, average at the 25 instead of average at the 35, something like that. That's a big difference. And what it brings to my mind is, if you think about it on two sides of things, if you think about on the kickoff side, the dirty ball, if I can buy myself 5, 6, 7, even 10 yards of field position battle, because I have a dirty ball kicker who's good at it, and therefore I go. And then on the other side of things, I can now kick field goals basically if we get to your 45-yard line. If you add that up as far as field position goes, and call it 15 yards or something like that, do you know how many millions of dollars a team would spend on extra defensive talent or offensive talent if they felt that it could make 15 yards of average field position per drive almost, difference, or at least paired drives? They would spend an inordinate amount of money to get that sort of advantage on offense or defense. And so it leads me to believe that there's going to be kickers out there that if they're so good that they can do both of those things, they can kick a really good dirty ball and 60 yards is in their range. Now those guys could go in the first round.
Yeah,
those guys could go. The old Sebastian Janikowski went in the first round thing, and obviously that was way before its time. But we could be looking at that sort of advantage tied to a kicker's skill set. And I'm the one on here I don't even want to talk about kickers. I don't want to talk about punters and shit like that, but now we're forced to. And so it's a real avenue. And I think for a while, people aren't going to recognize that the value of the position has changed in that way. And so if you're a team that's really good at finding those, I don't know, those rugby style kickers or whatever, going all over the world to find, which is now happening. We're seeing
Australia and Ireland, the two, with the kicking sports in Australia, obviously with Aussie rules and stuff, but you're seeing those kickers in Ireland now. There's a couple in the NFL now. There was the guy that's on the practice squad at the Giants, but the kid that's Charlie Smith, he's just been signed by the Saints, who just booted a 60-yarder the other day, who was a Gaelic footballer. So
if you can it's a new frontier. It's a new frontier in front office work and personnel. And it's kind of, anytime a new frontier opens off, it's kind of exciting and kind of interesting. But I think, listen, if you want to end up being a good team, and it's like, well, why'd they end up being a good team? It's because you find these edges in these new frontiers. That is one that has opened up. And it's interesting because Miami is going to go through, and we'll pivot to this in the second half of the show, the GM search. Like, this is exactly what we're now about to hire. And so if I were on that committee, I want to hear about that.
Yeah. And by the way, in a year's time, we're gonna test all of this, because Brandon Aubrey is gonna be a free agent. So
they're not gonna let him hit the what
is the franchise tag for a kicker? Because I think he's the rare guy that will get franchise tagged and be completely pissed off about it.
When you can pretty much get to
the 50.
To midfield and know that you're in field goal range. That is, and when you're starting at the 30, you've literally got to hit 20 yards and you got 3 points.
That's exactly right. Exactly right, Simon. It's changing.
And by the way,
it's changing stats. It's changing offensive stats.
And I know Chris was alluding to being a smart front office and having forward-looking, forward-thinking people and really smart people. That was the dumbest evaluation of all time, because there is no difference in kicking in the UFL to the NFL. It's still a snap. It's 7 yards back from the center, and they still rush you the same way, and the uprights are the same dimensions. And Brandon Aubrey was an absolute weapon. So why you didn't have 32 teams saying, "Oh, we need this guy," and it was just the Cowboys that said, "You know what? This guy that keeps kicking 60-yarders in the UFL, why not?"
Relevant to us, though, because we're sitting here talking about Riley Patterson, who he does neither of those things. He doesn't do the dirty ball well. You talked about that on various points of the season, Alf. And he doesn't kick the long ones. He's good, in the traditional kicker range, right? But he doesn't do either of those things. So to me,
have a massive leg either, does he?
Yeah. So to me, you don't pay him anything. You may get away with it specifically because I want a kicker that's practically free in my salary structure. If that's what you decide to do, okay. But he's not either of those things.
The thing about Lucas Carnero, the Ole Miss kicker last night, I mean, he's missed 4 field goals in 3 seasons. He's never missed an extra point, never missed from 50 plus, which is astonishing. And yesterday he booted never missed from 50 plus. And yesterday he booted a 56, a 55-yarder, and then a 47-yarder to win the game. And just looking at his numbers this season, I mean, he kicked a 54-yarder against Tulane. He kicked a 56-yarder against Georgia. But then when he was at Western Kentucky, the season before that, or the seasons before that, if you just look at his 2024 season, I mean, he kicked 54-yarder, a 51-yarder, a 53-yarder, a 50-yarder, a 54-yarder, and a 54-yarder in 7 games or whatever. So yeah.
Simon, what's the rules in the NFL, or maybe nobody knows, but the rules in the NFL, or sorry, the college, because the K-ball change in the NFL was that for now the kicking ball is allowed to be treated like any other ball, in terms of a team
rule.
being in charge of its preparation.
Yeah, I don't think you can essentially use any game ball. There are no
any game ball
tables,
and the teams control the ball. Like UM has an equipment room, and for that game 2 nights ago, they took their balls.
So it's translatable from college to the NFL. That's the situation. Yeah. They're the same now.
Yeah, UM on the plane to the Fiesta Bowl in Arizona will travel with their footballs for the game. So, all right, we're going to go to break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the GM search and Troy Aikman. Why Troy Aikman? You will see why. But first, Underdog. Football season is in full swing. We have the college football playoffs also headed to the semifinal. They're on there as well. And Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite player will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. Get your picks right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. With Underdog Unwrapped, you'll unwrap tons of promos all throughout the holidays. We've got boosts, gimme picks, deal reveals, and even some surprises sprinkled in. Now is the best time to get in the game. As far as this weekend's game, you got to figure Jalen Wright's going to get the ball. I don't know if Devon Achane has much of a shot to play since he didn't practice today. Although Mike McDaniel was being cagey. He was like, I've seen players play while not practicing on a Friday. Never happened in his tenure as head coach. So we shall see on Devon Achane. So just keep Jalen Wright in mind. He had a good game against New England last year in Foxborough. So download the Underdog app today and use the promo code 3YARDS to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code 3YARDS. Underdog. Make picks, win money.
18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
And we are back. All right, Simon. They hired Troy Aikman to do what? Well, he's going to be kind of in a committee of Dan Marino with Brandon Shore quarterbacking the whole thing. Although Cam Wolfe, his report that he put out there saying that Brandon Shore is quarterbacking the whole thing mysteriously disappeared off of Twitter this morning.
Not a coincidence.
Yeah, so who knows what that's about? But Troy Aikman, new eyes, and I'm kind of for it because, and I'll tell you why. I've been to, I covered a couple of preseason games, one where it was between Miami and Jacksonville here in Miami with Troy Aikman doing the game for Monday Night Football. And you could see the clout and the connections that Troy Aikman has. Like he was walking into the scouts room and talked to pretty much everybody, including Marvin Allen and Chris Greer. So he's well connected. Yeah, and he's well connected. And this is what we talked about for a while. This team needs new eyes to just look at this whole thing and say, no, you're actually wrong about this. Or yes, you're right about this. Or you know what? Maybe you should do this. Now, do they listen to him? That's another thing. But your thoughts, Simon, on Troy Aikman being brought on in a consultant's role?
Yeah, two things. One is that, look, I think, like you just said, new eyes, new ears is a really good thing. My one fear about this coaching search is just going to be the GM search and the coaching search, if it happens, is just going to be conducted by the same people. You know, it's the same people that have just been getting it wrong for 25 years. You know, that to me makes no sense. The one caveat is that it's kind of unusual to bring in a guy with zero front office experience to hire front office people, but Aikman does know a lot. And it does know a lot of people. The one thing I would say is that McDaniel, in the last 20 minutes while we've been on air, has just been asked about Aikman's big criticism on Monday Night Football against the Steelers about McDaniel. And I don't know what he says because it's in front of me, but David Ferones asked him. I wonder if I just might hold my microphone to the speaker and we can just play it and hear what McDaniel actually has to say, because it's probably quite relevant.
I saw some.
Oh, did you? Okay, cool.
He's mad. In my opinion. Well, no, he didn't show it. I mean, of course, he did the McDaniel thing. He's a very politic and word salady kind of responses. But
I don't think. See what we get.
I don't. Yeah, go ahead. You can play it. I don't think the body language was good.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing it.
No, I'm not hearing it. No,
we're not hearing it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. But no, I think just on that, Simon. I don't know if you wanted to go on, but yeah, and then like the one thing, it's sort of like when you're asked about Troy Aikman coming on and helping with the GM thing, and your response is basically you start with kind of a it's sort of like finding reasons why it's not bad.
Yeah.
Means that, back there, the immediate assumption is it's bad.
Yeah.
The immediate assumption is it's
This is
bad.
bad.
And let me try and find the reason that it's not bad. And it's sort of like, and that's the way it came off to me is Mike McDaniel. I think he knows that Aikman blistered him on the Monday Night Football for an hour.
Which he did.
He did. And so, he's probably got to have some feelings about that. But I mean, I'll go on about it because I have some thoughts. But Simon, do you have?
No, you go for it. You go for it.
Yeah. So the one thing that I'll say about this is the Cam Wolf report that got taken down was way more important to me than this revelation about Troy Aikman. To me, Troy Aikman is just, you said it all. He's got connections. He's an outside voice. To me, I think of it at like executives on a board and things like that in my world. And we have outside representation on boards, and it's viewed as a good thing from an ESG standpoint. It's always viewed as a positive thing. You need those outside voices. It is interesting, though, he doesn't have front office experience, but it's a lot like sort of like Louis Riddick in terms of, for 6 years now, people have been talking about Troy Aikman joining a front office, like, being a general manager after his broadcast career is done. So he's interested in this. I'm told that this is him dipping his toe in the water, that no, you should not expect that he's going to take a position with the Miami Dolphins at the end of this thing. No, he's not pulling a Dick Cheney and saying, well, the most qualified GM is me, that is not happening. He's not ready because he's not ready for that. He's not doing that.
By the way, the Dolphins had their own Dick Cheney situation with Joe Bailey, if you remember.
Yeah, and actually, I think Mike Tannenbaum kind of did that a little bit too. But anyway, I'm told that no, this is not what that's looking like. However, connections being made and impressions are being made, and sometime down the road, if Troy Aikman ends up in Miami and with Steve Ross in some capacity, it wouldn't exactly be a shock because that's how Steve Ross has operated in the past. I'm just told it's not happening right now. The more important thing was that, Cam Wolf talked about Brandon Shore quarterbacking the GM interview cycle. He talked about, Steve Ross being the guy who will make the decision on Mike McDaniel. Steve Ross, no other, being the guy who will make the decision on Mike McDaniel, and that he really likes Mike McDaniel, and he's trying to find reasons to keep Mike McDaniel as opposed to reasons to dismiss Mike McDaniel. And I think that this is coming off like a very poor look for prospective GM candidates. And it's going to affect that search, because if you're a GM candidate and you're looking at, first off, let's keep in mind, if you're a GM prospective candidate, you only get one shot, right? You're gonna take a GM job somewhere. If you fail at it, you're not gonna get another shot. Maybe it happened, but overall, no, you're gonna one shot in your whole life, right? So you're gonna be selective about this. And how it looks right now is the Miami Dolphins have already decided on Tua Tagovailoa, so they've already decided on the franchise quarterback situation. The Mike McDaniel question is not in your hands. It's in Steve Ross's hands. So, whatever happens there happens. This is all per the Cam Wolf report, like that got taken down. And also there is now an entrenched and empowered caps and contracts guy who answers to Steve Ross and will basically, and is the man that's hiring you, by the way. Is the man that quarterbacked the interview cycle and was instrumental in hiring you. And so he's basically going to hand you a budget sheet that lets you know how much you're allowed to spend on what. And at that point, you're looking as a prospective GM candidate and you're saying, this is a GM and name only job. This is you're putting all the decision making. Not only are you putting all the decision making around me to just have me stay in my lane as basically a glorified director of scouting, but you're also developing a habit of taking the decisions out of my hands. The quarterback decision's not in my hands. Hell, you took the Jalen Phillips decision out of my hands a number of months ago. The head coach position is out of my hands. It's a very poor look for a prospective GM, and if that is the way, and so Miami, I'm not surprised Miami has to really control and manage the message here, because if that's how it looks, they're going to get another Dennis Hickey. They're going to get a guy who is basically, in line for a director position somewhere in the NFL, not really a GM position. And that's the way it's going to go. And so I think the Dolphins have to be really careful here. And that's why I think that they kind of clarified through Barry Jackson and said, this is all Steve Ross. It's, Brandon Shore is going to be involved in the process. Dan Marino is going to be involved in the process. Troy Aikman is going to be involved in the process, whatever. I think they have to be so careful, because they're starting to paint a picture of a GM in name only kind of situation. And that will turn off the better qualified GM prospects out there. Trust me, it will.
In that story, there was something that like set off alarm bells in my head when they said they wanted a guy with a strong scouting background.
Yeah.
Essentially, they're rigging this thing for it to be Ray Agnew. Like that's what they're going to do. They're going to hire Ray Agnew. And look, today is January the 2nd at 1:24 p.m. Bookmark this. They're hiring Ray Agnew. They're essentially telling you what they want. They've already made up their mind before they've actually done anything. Now, if you let's say they do hire Ray Agnew to be the general manager, right? And Brandon Shore is going to be in some type of czar position above him. And Champ Kelly is going to be recommended for one of the director spots, probably pro personnel. We're back to square one. We have another committee. We have 1,000 people in the room trying to make one decision. So we're going to get back to all these compromises that we had before. And that's when you fail.
And most of them are already here, Alf. Most of them were already here. And what are we complaining about? We need clean sweep. We need outside voices. We need outside eyes.
Or at least singular leadership. Like you could have Brandon Shore at the top as a czar. Personally, I would have liked him to be just, you handle contracts and the salary cap because you're actually pretty decent at that. You're one of the people that wrote part of the CBA. So it stands to reason you know what the hell you're doing. But singular leadership, scouts below the general manager. Have the general manager set the direction. Not have essentially two general managers, we're getting back to what Brian Flores did 4 years ago with 3 offensive coordinators.
Are we absolutely sure we've not hired him to play quarterback?
Yeah. Troy Aikman?
Yeah. By the way, yeah. Hey.
But like
Philip Rivers wasn't embarrassing at all. So now Aikman's 14 years older. So
yeah, what point does somebody like Will McClay become front and center of this conversation? Because Aikman's going to obviously know him really well and would be a hell of a candidate if he does decide to leave Dallas.
Yeah, maybe their plan is maybe they've already made up their mind, and I'm thinking Ray Agnew, and maybe they're thinking that, and they're like, you know what? We hire Aikman. He's going to massage the process toward this one guy, which is the one that we want. And end of story. Maybe that's it.
We go back and look at some of the picks, Chidobe Awuzie, Jordan Lewis, Xavier Woods, Noah Brown, Van Der Esch, Connor Williams, Michael Gallup, Dorrance Armstrong, Dalton Schultz, Cedric Wilson, Donovan Wilson, Tony Pollard, Tristan Hill, Connor McGovern, CeeDee Lamb, Trayvon Diggs, Tyler Biadasz, Israel Mukwama, Nahshon Wright has just had a massive season, Adigi Zuwa, Micah Parsons, Damone Clark, Deron Bland, Jake Ferguson, Sam Williams, Tyler Smith. I mean, that's just until 2022. Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's some serious names there that he's drafted. So,
if you want my really far out there conspiracy theory, the most far out there that I'm willing to go, it's I know that there's a relationship between Troy Aikman and Jason Garrett, for example, and I also know that the Dolphins and Steve Ross really like Jason Garrett. They respect him. There's even a relationship, I believe, with Dan Marino there. But so you know, I put this to a source, and I didn't necessarily get any kind of yay or nay on it or anything like that. But you know, what if this is essentially, what if they've already been talking to Jason Garrett about taking the head coach job of the Dolphins over for Mike McDaniel next year? Experienced head coach. I know nobody's going to be excited about that. In fact, most of the fan base would probably off themselves about it. But I mean, like, you know, I think that what if presupposing that they had been talking to Jason Garrett, and knowing that these hiring cycles have to happen simultaneously, right? The GM hiring cycle is happening, you know, as soon as the season is over. The head coach hiring cycle would have to happen, and you can't just hire Jason Garrett. You got to go through all these interviews. You got to go through minority interviews. You got to go through everything. These are happening simultaneously, but Jason Garrett would want to have some say over the GM, right? He would want to have some kind of, you know, his hand in that. What if Troy Aikman is his friend and representative on the GM hiring committee to try and screen through GM candidates who are most aligned with Garrett's vision or something like that? That's probably the most far out I'm willing to go. I'm not saying that's actually what's happening, but you know, I could kind of see it. It would put some pieces together. As for, well, why Troy Aikman? Like, what relationship did you have with Troy Aikman that all of a sudden put him onto in this position? I think that if they were already decided that way, and like, you know, hey, Jason, we want you to take over for Mike McDaniel, Jason would be like, well, I want to have some say in the GM thing, but I can't literally be on that committee while we're going through a hiring cycle to hire me, right? So maybe we'll just plant my friend on it. You know, maybe we'll plant Troy Aikman on it, and he can screen for guys that are going to reflect my vision. I don't know. It's probably not, but you know, it is possible.
Yeah. I just don't like that they already came out and said, oh, you know, we need a guy with a strong scouting background.
That was Pelissero too, so that's pretty strong. That's
It's the one thing I hoped they wouldn't say, and it was the first thing they said.
Yep.
Which is what?
Yeah.
Well, that we want a guy with a strong scouting background. That was the thing I hoped they wouldn't say, because that's not, to me, is not what they need. And for that to be the first thing that comes out is
like, I would almost like Brandon Shore as the czar, and then you hire the general manager.
I wouldn't, because what we want new, like Brandon Shore. I'm sorry, I like Brandon Shore, but Brandon Shore has grown up in the Dolphins organization. He has grown up with this mediocrity. He has grown up with this mediocrity. You know, I think he probably knows what he's doing about caps and contracts and being able to model things and being a financial guy, but he is the definition of not outside voice, right? And to have a situation where we're like, yeah, we need to start new. We're getting rid of Chris Greer. We're getting rid of Adam Engroff. We're getting rid of, you know, the all the guys that we got rid of at the top of the scouting thing. But in their place, we're empowering somebody who is incredibly endemic to the Miami problems over the last decades, and he's empowered to hand, you know, the general manager a budget sheet that lets him know what he's allowed to spend on quarterback, what he's allowed to spend on you know, this position, this unit, this, like, and strategically how much debt we're willing to go into and stuff like that. Trust me, the person who makes that decision is de facto in charge of the fortunes of the franchise, because those decisions are that important. So, you know, no, I don't think he's going to be a czar, though, Alf. I think I think it's a completely separate lane. I think this guy answers to Steve Ross, and he develops the budgets and the tactical resource allocation. This guy shops for the groceries, but he's handed a sheet of what he's allowed to pay. You know, like that's I think what could happen. And I just think that you're not going to attract top GM talent if you do that, if that's the way you present it. You're not.
No, and once you're cutting the entire pool in half by saying strong scouting background, you know, you're making all the same mistakes again. Like,
you should be open to all of it. All of it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I would hire anybody. I would hire, you never know. Like, so what?
Ray Agnew has the best strategic vision for how the Dolphins should be going forward. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, if he wins the job, he wins the job. But if not, you're basically saying, yeah, we want Ray Agnew. That's what you're saying, or maybe Champ Kelly's keeping the job.
And it's kind of a red flag that Ray Agnew has not even gotten a GM interview by now, and he's been in position for a while to get those GM interviews.
Yeah, he's been next
a little bit
forever.
of a red flag.
Yeah, he's been next forever.
Is that not a red flag?
Yeah. And by the way, Ray Agnew, you know where he got his start from. Very similar to Chris Greer, New England. So he's from that tree, once again. So yeah, that's where they're starting. I guess they'll get going pretty quickly. I guess after Sunday's game, we're gonna get some clarity on who the head coach is gonna be. Maybe it's Mike McDaniel. Maybe it's somebody else. If it's somebody else, I wonder how they're going to conduct two searches. I'm thinking that this thing is kind of rigged already for Mike McDaniel to be here a year at least.
I don't know, man. I'm questioning that now.
I don't know.
I'm genuinely questioning that now.
His body language looked different. In his availabilities this week, his body language has looked different. Like he looks like a different person than he was pre-Steelers game. Like I think that Steelers game was not only his biggest failure here as a head coach, I think he like deep down inside he's like, yep, I think I fucked up. I think I fucked up with this game. He could have bought himself a year with a win against the Steelers, because I would have erased a ton of narratives. All right, let's get to this game a little bit here on the way out. It's Drake May going for his MVP. Man, I didn't think it was possible, and the touchdown disparity is still pretty big. It's over 10 touchdowns for Matt
Stafford.
Stafford.
Not if you add in running touchdowns.
Right. It's a lot closer. And Drake May, as far as the schedule, yeah, you could talk about the schedule. He plays the schedule he's given, and he won 13 games. So, you win 13 games. I don't care what schedule you're given. That means something. Sometimes a massaged schedule gets you 11 wins, and you're like, you start puffing your chest. You're like, I'm a division champion. I won 11 games. But yeah, you played a bunch of nobodies. This team won 13. It's different. Okay. You don't get there. Look, they've beaten two playoff teams. Okay. The two playoff teams they beat, they needed those games, both of those games. I love the way Drake May has played this season. He's on schedule. There's literally nothing wrong with him. He's erased all the narratives that were popping up about him, about not being able to come back in a game, not throwing for prolific yardage. He already got those two out of the way this year. He has his comeback. He has his 300-yard game. Man, I think he's really, really good. I think they'll be scoreboard watching a little bit in this game, whether they need it or not. But Miami gets to play spoiler here for his MVP. Is there also a Northeast bias in the media? Absolutely. It's like somebody was mentioning it today.
The media
loves
voters as well, though. The media.
The voters, 70. I think that the number was 72% of the voters are all Northeast media.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean they're all Patriots fans. I mean,
no, but they're going to lean toward the guy that they watch the most.
I think it's. I don't think that they watch the Rams any less than they would. I mean, an NFL reporter that just doesn't watch West Coast games, that to me doesn't make any sense. I mean, the things that I would argue for in May's favor is that high quarterback rating, high completion percentage against common opponents this year. He's 6-0. Stafford is 4-2. But what I think is really interesting is that when you dig into some more of the analytics, so catch rate over expectation, this is the NFL next gen stats thing. It's a model to estimate the likelihood of a ball being caught given the locations of a receiver, nearby defenders, sideline, other factors, etc. 6 receivers who run 300 or more routes this season with a CROE of at least 10%. 2 of them are the obvious first-team All-Pros, Puka Nacua and Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? Jake Ferguson is 5th. George Pickens is 6th, all right? But the other 3 guys in the top 6 are all Patriots. Kayshon Boutte, Stephon Diggs, and Mac Hollins are all running what would comfortably be the highest catch rates over expectation of their respective careers. And 3 wide receivers in the top 6, that's a Drake May stat. And I think things like that are really important to, his pocket movement is a superpower. We talked about Tua's accuracy superpower. his ability to manipulate the pocket to keep plays alive, not to run, just to avoid. Dan Marino had it, just to avoid sacks and be able to extend plays just long enough for receivers to get open. But Miami has the opportunity to burst that MVP bubble, because I think if he plays well against us, I think he probably does win MVP. So yeah, it's it all comes down to who plays, who gets rested, who, Mike McDaniel will want to keep it close because he wants to keep his job. Mike McDaniel beats the Patriots, or if they lose on a last-minute field goal, or they lose by 3-4 points, it's going to be a more difficult conversation. If they get blown out and Denver lose to the Chiefs and May wins MVP, it's just like an extra kind of, so there's purer victories to take, and, winning the game is not a purer victory, but maybe denying Drake May MVP and denying the Patriots home field advantage, you count that as a slightly purer victory, but you kind of take it. But look, this is a good team that's got bigger fish to fry later in the season. And, will May even play? I know there's he'll, because the Chiefs are down to, I think Steve DeBerg's second string quarterback for the game on Sunday. So, will I can't see the Chiefs beating Denver. So is there
it's the Chargers, isn't it?
Is it the Chargers? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I think Jim Zorn is playing to protect Justin Herbert, but is there would you even play Drake May and risk him? I don't know. It's an interesting one, but I think the Dolphins, we talked about it on Monday, they've continued to play hard, Chris, and if they do play hard, there are going to be some interesting conversations, but I do think that this will be Mike McDaniel's. It's interesting. To me, this is probably McDaniel and Tua's last game in Miami, and I think that's something that's noteworthy.
They've already had their last game in Miami, right?
Yeah, but in terms of just being last game for Miami, but also just suiting up and going out there and being on the being involved. To me, I think this is both.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And the gravity of that started to hit me last week. This might be Mike McDaniel's last coached game in Miami, at the home, in front of the home crowd. Won the game, Tua Tagovailoa's last appearance on the sideline in Miami. He may never do that again. For all we know. I think that's all important. I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be about the second half. By the end of the first half, as we go into the second half, I think we're going to have a very clear idea of how the rest of the game is going to go. Because they're going to be scoreboard watching, and as you suggest, are the Chargers really going to take care of business against the Denver Broncos when it's been suggested that they're going to be resting people? I think you said Justin Herbert probably not going to play, stuff like that. So it's a lot like last year, week 17 last year. By halftime, we knew what was happening.
By the way, that's official. Justin Herbert's not playing.
Justin Herbert's out. Okay, so so it's a lot like last year when we were scoreboard watching the Chiefs game, but by halftime we knew what was happening there. And in the second half, Tyreek Hill is like, "No, I'm not playing anymore," and stuff like that. So it's gonna be the vibe of the game is gonna be weird. As you go from first half to second half. And I think the Dolphins players defensively, they definitely play for each other. And they play, they bring their mentality there. I think offensively, it's going to be, how enthused are we around, if Quinn Ewers starts throwing some first half touchdown passes, then the enthusiasm will carry them through the game. If not, if they're struggling a little bit, I think that I trust the defense to keep up their intensity more than the offense. And so we'll see how that goes. And, I think I mentioned this on Twitter and elsewhere, that this season, if you look at, the past 10 years of not Dolphins, but NFL performances, and what sort of defensive performance from point scored, turnovers and things like that are good enough to win you the game 90% of the time, regardless of what's happening on offense, right? If you allow this few points with, this many turnovers, then you won 90% of the time. The Dolphins defense has done that 7 or, arguably even 8 times this year. And the flip side of that is how many times has the Dolphins offense done enough that you would say, regardless of what's going on, you probably won the game 90% of the time. They've only done that once this year, the Dolphins offense. I think that there is definitely a situation going on where the defensive coaching on this team, and this has been happening all year and shaping up all year, the defensive coaching of this team is more impressive than the offensive coaching on this team. The offense started out with all the continuity and all the players and all the money. The defense started out with a shit sandwich. And the defense has, take off that first month of the season, which you knew was going to be bad because of all the turnover, the most turnover of any defense in the league, the most, all the rookies that they had to play, rookies take some time to round into shape, the big layoffs with guys like Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, who had big injury layoffs. You knew they were going to have to knock some rust off, and they have indeed. And then, dropping guys in very last minute that are going to have to play on Sunday. Like this guy only got here a couple days ago. This guy only got here a couple weeks ago. If you take aside those sorts of things, we're always going to be challenges for the first month of the season. But if you look at the months of October, November, December, then the Miami defense is middling to even top 10 in the NFL for those periods of time. And that is remarkable to me. That is a remarkable job on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't think I can say the same about the offense. I really don't. And so, that's sort of, we go into this thing about, is Mike McDaniel going to survive? I think it's more of a question is Anthony Weaver going to be here next year? What sort of defensive coaching staff are we going to get? So we're going to get a prideful defensive performance against the New England Patriots on this Sunday. What are we going to get him around the offense? I think it all hinges on, kind of early. Does Quinn Ewers throw some spark out there, touchdown passes, stuff like that, get the guys going? Then that'll carry them through the rest of the game, and I think they'll win. But if not, I don't know.
Yeah, and I go back to that Steelers game. If you watch that first half, watch the Dolphin defense. Don't watch the plays. Don't watch the scoreboard. Watch the individual players, the individual effort, the hitting that they were doing in that first half. They were beating the piss out of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And at some point, they just looked at the other side of the ball and like, our offense is really doing this bullshit in this game. And it just became too much to bear. The burden was too heavy in that game. And then, the team fell apart. I think that was the key game. I think that this game is going to be pretty much the same way. I do believe that the Patriots will scoreboard watch. They're not going to get a favorable outcome in that other game. Mm-hmm. So they might throttle down a little bit and allow Quinn Ewers to make the game close. So I'll go ahead first and I'll pick the game. I think New England holds on. Let's say they hold on. Dolphin defensive performance, I think, will be there for the last game of the season. They hold on 24-16 Patriots. Your thoughts, Simon?
Yeah, I think May will play a bit. I think Will Campbell might very well apparently is at the podium as we're talking, and said that Will Campbell and Milton Williams are going to be activated off IR for Sunday's game. So they're clearly not resting that many players. Stephon Diggs is going to play. So I think that the New England 30, Miami 16.
All right. Chris?
What was the game? How long ago? Maybe you guys can answer this question because my memory is a bit fuzzy. How long ago was that game where the New England Patriots played all their backups against the Dolphins? The Dolphins had everything to play for. New England had nothing to play for because, their playoff seeding was taken care of. They played their backups and they beat the piss out of us.
2016. Anyway, it was 2016. Dolphins had Clint.
Was it that recently?
Yeah, Dolphins had clinched.
I'm thinking of something more in antiquity.
Now, Dolphins clinched the playoff spot the week before against the Jets, and the Dolphins could have moved up to like the 4 seed or the 5 seed at the time, and avoided the Steelers. The Patriots basically sat everybody, and they beat the piss out of us and dropped us down to the 6 seed, and we ended up playing the Steelers in the first round, and they kicked our ass.
The game I'm thinking of is the one where Doug Flutie hit the drop kick against us. It was that. Okay. Am I misremembering those circumstances? Because I think it was 2006, and I'm trying to
January 1st, 2006.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where like I think Mike Vrabel was on that team as a player. Like he would have been on that team as a player. And it's I don't know, something makes me think of that. Like you're scoreboard watching and now you'd have nothing to play for. But Mike Vrabel has been part of teams.
He was on the team.
He was on that he's been part of teams in situations where they play their ass off anyway. And sort of I sort of wonder if he can drive that into their heads. And that's ultimately the reason that I'm going to pick the Dolphins to lose the game, is because of that experience. And maybe it's neither here nor there, but
yeah. If you really want to go way back to antiquity, there was a time when the Dolphins won a division with 12 wins on a tiebreaker over the Buffalo Bills, who also won 12 games, and the Dolphins had to win the last game of the season in New England to clinch that game, and they won it by a field goal. And that New England team was god awful. It was like 2-14, that New England team, and Miami just eked out the division title. So then, of course, lose to the Bills in the AFC Championship game a few weeks later. So yeah, that tends to happen. Scoreboard watching does tend to happen. All right, that's it. There's no more. On Monday, we will talk about the results of this game, the end of the season, maybe a new head coach, or maybe the continuation of the Mike McDaniel era. We also might even sneak in some college football playoff semifinal. But till then.